Year he, year he, year he, year he, year he, year he. Check, 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 check. 2 seconds. Check, check. Year he, year he. Check, year he, year he. Oh, why is it not connected? 1 second. Why is it not connecting to this? Check, check. Year he, year he. There we go. Much better. I can hear it back now. Much better. Year he, year he. Grand old chat room. Where you hiding? Hold on. Where you hiding? There you are. There you are. I see you folks. I see the peoples. I see the grand old chat room. How we doing? How we doing? Peoples. Maximus. That's my Croatian brother. He's in the building. He's in the building. Day one S in the building. Blood. Blood. Oh, connection. Check, 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 check. Year he, year he. The connection is poor. I can hear it lagging. I might have to disconnect this. If it gets any worse, maybe we start this again. So where are we? Where are we? We are here right now. We are here right now. Lani in the building. How you doing? How you doing? Salutes to you. It's lagging bad. Yeah, I know. It's it's out of my hands. Right? It's out of my hands. It is above me. Right? So forgive me. If it gets any worse, I don't know. I have to restart or try on StreamYard or something. Right? Check, check. You're he. Testing, testing. You're he. It's cutting in and out. I can hear it back on the replay. But yes, first and foremost, salutes to everybody who was there yesterday. What a wild event. What a crazy turnout. We had King Nico in the building. Right? King Nico. Imagine that. The man himself, King Nico. Yeah, we had him on board yesterday. That was fine. Uh, I enjoyed myself. I enjoyed the dialogues, conversations, and that's all I asked for, right? I do not ask for much. I do not ask for much other than a conversation, right? It seems like he's done with flat Earth for now. Seems like he's on other things. He's got other things in mind, right? So salute to that. Who knows? He may pop back out again and find something to do with flat Earth. But yeah, it was a good conversation. Genuine, yeah, genuine conversation. There's a few more things I wanted to ask him, but I'm sure that'll come to mind again. But yeah, salutes to Nico. You're always welcome here again. And Today is Moon Day, right? Mond-day. Mond-day. Their Mond-day. So we've got a few things in store. Nothing fancy, just a bit to do with the moon again, you know. So let me just shut the hell up and watch some moon shit.
We're here with episode 2 of our discussion on the early pagan origins of Islam. Islam, as we know, has many influences, but we're looking at something that's been disputed for decades, but we're finally starting to piece together the fact that there are pagan elements and there are moon worship elements within Islam. And today I'm joined by JC, the Quranic Endgame, who was with me on episode 1, and I've got Emmanuel Goldstein, who's joined me several times on the channel in the past, and he's here with us tonight. He might add some interesting spice on a related topic, especially with regards to Gnosticism, and also he'll be joining me and JC when we get around to another topic related to Gnosticism and early Gnostic influences on Islam, going back to the early first, second century, well, late first, early second century. But yeah, so we're here to talk about monotheism. Is Islam monotheism or monotheism? And
I like that. Monotheism or monotheism, right? Just one letter changes it, right? Mono or monotheism.
think that as we go through the series, we're going to establish it is monotheism. Emmanuel, say hello briefly and just tell us briefly who you are and why you're here.
Hello, I'm the resident German. No, we talked before about my upbringing. I grew up in a sort of new age, esoteric, but very Gnostic cult. I recently read their introductory material again, and they emphasized over and over again that they see themselves, like so many other New Age groups, as a continuation of various Gnostic heresies and groups from ancient times and from the Middle Ages.
Right. Okay. And also, you mentioned that there seems to be a touch of Manichaeism in Islam. We're going to briefly touch on that now as we go through this, and then of course we'll explore that as another strand a little later. And JC, welcome. What are you doing here?
Oh, hello, everyone watching. Hello, guys, and nice to meet you, Emmanuel. So it's interesting, just as we're exploring Jerusalem and all of the influences from the south of Arabia to understand the beginnings of Islam. This series is very good. On the first episode, I had a lot of feedback, a lot of very positive feedback, and then a good number of trolls, which means they want to change the topic and stuff. So that is a very, very, very good sign. So look forward to seeing what you've got for us today.
All right. Yeah, that's good. What was the good feedback? Any positive comments that were noteworthy?
Yes, basically agreeing with the connections, particularly the whole thing with the crescent moon, and these sort of things that they need to come from some place, and they are established or attested in pagan places, as opposed to being from the Judeo-Christian traditions. So that sort of thing.
All right. Right. Let's jump into where we ended off last week, which so the crescent, is it Ottoman or is it pagan? Muslims will commonly tell you, no, but that's an Ottoman symbol. Okay, if it's an Ottoman symbol, why is it on top of every mosque? Okay, if it doesn't belong there, why doesn't the Muslim committee do something about it? You know, why don't they, I don't know, put a symbol of, a dove? Why don't they put a dove? Because Islam is the religion of peace. Why don't they put a nice dove? Or even more peaceful than doves, why don't they put a pillow? A nice, soft, down-filled pillow.
A pillow. Oh my goodness. Eh? A pillow. That is hilarious. That is hilarious. But yeah, why not a dove? Why not a dove? Why the crescent moon and the star? I've got no problem with it. I just want to know why. That's all.
Because pillows are peaceful. Pillows are very peaceful. I don't know why they don't do that. Why do you think, JC, that they put Christians use the cross because the cross is historically and religiously important to us. Why don't Muslims use the pillow as a sign of peace? Why do they have a moon?
Don't know. At one point I thought it was because of the whole moon split, but we know that is invented like hundreds of years after the time.
Sorry, real quick. Why the moon? That's a good point. Why the moon? I mean, everything seems to tie back to the moon. Everything seems to tie back to the moon. Even most of these religions. Moon worship. They are really moon worship. Moon worshiping systems, religions, all right? Check it out.
Time of Muhammad. So that's
Ruled by Saturn in the building. How you doing?
certainly noted. But it could have been a burak. I think I would have been happy with a burak.
Okay, yeah, I think a pillow is a very peaceful thing. It's even more peaceful than doves, because doves are known to poop on the head of statues, and that, you know. Emmanuel, your thoughts, your brief thoughts on this question.
Yeah, as you know, at least I think I know why. How lengthy do you want me to explain this?
15 seconds. We'll get into the detail.
It's an ancient pagan symbol. Pagan, in my definition, means people who worship planetary objects. It's a planetary object that is worshipped as a god.
That's a fair point. We'll actually get to that towards the end of this, but yes, there's reason for that. Okay, so briefly to recap, we have a look at these symbols.
Wow, I like the way he put that. People who worship planetary objects. Okay.
Symbols from different cultures, and also the symbols of Baal. Baal is mentioned in the Bible as a bad guy. Okay, and you've got, look at this crescent and the moon, right? The crescent here with the sun possibly, but the disk, right? The crescent and star, the crescent and another either star something, but that's from the Hittites, right? Then you've got Haran, Turkey. That's where Abraham is from originally. That's the religion that he left because Abraham was in Haran. Then you've got crescent and star, crescent and star, crescent and star, right? So religious symbols, of course, historically and theologically significant. We use the cross because it's theologically and historically significant. But the crescent moon is obviously historically and theologically significant in Islam, or they would have used something else, right? And of course, Islam claims to be the religion of Abraham, which we will focus on heavily because we need to understand a little bit more about Abraham and the word Hanif. Now, Arabic, it's a masculine name, meaning righteous person or true believer, apparently. But it is agreed that Hanif is derived from the Syriac word Hanpe, meaning heathen or pagan. Now, before we go on, since you're here, Emmanuel, I'm going to bring up those images you sent me, right? And I want to show, because we're going to be soon referencing the Zoroastrians in Persia. That would be the Sasanian Empire, which the Muslims, of course, fought. And eventually they contested Arabia and they took over, they expelled them, and eventually they took over Persia. So I want you to have a look at these symbols. So where did you get these symbols? Tell us a little bit more about them.
Well, this is the image on the left is just from the Wikipedia article about Zoroastrianism. So this is a very prominent symbol. Actually, originally it was a pagan symbol, but again, Zoroastrianism is basically this transitional religion that went from a pagan religion into a monotheist religion, but they kept the pagan symbol and it actually kept the pagan god. Their god, if seen as a planet, is actually Saturn. That is, you see on the right, that is actually the Saturn configuration. Of course, many people don't believe that, but I do. I read the books of David Talbot, and I think they're convincing. He explains that in ancient times, the orbits, especially the orbit of Saturn, was actually different. So this is this isn't actually the moon. The crescent we see is actually the crescent of Saturn. One way to imagine that would be, Saturn has this ring. If you view the ring as at an angle, it would has this.
Hold on, wait, take that back, my man. Let me hear that again.
Ancient times, the Talbot, and I think they're convincing. He explains that in ancient times, people don't believe that, but I do. I read the books of David Talbot, and I think they're convincing. He explains that in ancient times, the orbits, especially the orbit of Saturn, was actually different. So this isn't actually the moon. The crescent we see is actually the crescent of Saturn. One way to imagine that would be, Saturn has this ring. If you view the ring as an
Wow, he said it's not even the crescent they're showing in this image, it's the ring of Saturn.
At an angle, it would look like this crescent. This is also why the crescent, even in the Islamic symbolism, is on the bottom. It's not originally. It was not on the side. Because
you see, actually, it is on the bottom in multiple flags, and also depends on the location.
Yes.
So
yes, you see, sometimes it moves. Sometimes it's on the bottom. Sometimes it's on the left side. Sometimes it's on the right side, depending on, obviously, on the orbit and the angle you're viewing it from. Yes.
So I want to mention that you can see the symbol here, right? This is Zoroastrian symbol, which is the religion of Iran, what we call Iran today. It was definitely not, shall we say, Islam, but of course Muslims today will claim that it was, a religion of Allah, that Zoroaster was a servant of Allah and so on. They'll claim anything. But you can see here, you've got the very same symbol. Now, notice the wings here. This is obviously taken from Egyptian symbolism. That would be taken from Egypt, this symbol here on the top right.
The wings of Isis.
The wings of Isis, exactly. That is Egyptian. And we spoke briefly in the previous episode on the Egyptian.
The wings represent the wing disc, right? The wing disc. That's what the wings are. When you see the wings and the ring, it's a representation of the winged disc, right?
Religious links into Islam. We did touch on those, where those come from. Do you want to tell us a bit about this one? Of course, is
Saturn.
Mithra,
right. On the left, you have Saturn. On the right, you have Mithra. These symbols are all present as well in Zoroastrianism and in Islam, by the way. So Mithra is actually, well, this is Mithras. This is the Roman variant. But Mithra is a very prominent god in Zoroastrianism. They claim to be monotheists, but it's weird, They're gotta be the only monotheists that have several gods. And Mithra is one of their main gods, and Mithra is always depicted with this sort of Smurf hat. Well, nowadays we would call it a Smurf hat. Back then it would be a what is called a Phrygian cap, and then later of
Phrygium, Pilium, Phrygium. We looked into that, right? The Pilium, Phrygium. I'll hit you with the Pilium, Phrygium. Yeah.
Of course, it was famously used by the Chocobons. Of course, the sickle, again, was famously used by political entities as well. But again, the sickle is, you can see here very well that the sickle is associated with Saturn, the pagan deity.
Yes. And you have that theme again, right? With the three stars and the moon, right? The 3 stars and the moon. Look, 1, 2, 3. Oh, my phone's ringing. Guys, always. Yeah, you got the 3 stars and the moon, right? And then, yeah, the moon right there, the crescent.
Is associated with Saturn, the pagan deity.
And stars.
it's the
as well.
same. It's the same sort of sickle that we usually confuse.
So I wonder if even Saturn's tied in with the moon. I wonder if Saturn is tied in to the moon. I've made that claim already, right? Now, the biggest bodies out there must be the smallest bodies, right? You see how that works? I think the biggest bodies are really the smallest bodies. So Saturn thereby must be one of the smaller bodies, right? Vice versa. One of them ones.
With the moon when we see the star and crescent.
Yeah. So you've got a crescent and you have stars, and of course Saturn devouring his own sun. Saturn is a very violent god. And of course the bull we've got here, because later on towards the end of the series though, we will talk about the bull significance and of course the bull's horns, the crescent of the bull's two horns.
Yes, the bull is of course the divine bull. That's also worshipped in Egypt as well.
And here we have, oh my God, the sickle or the crescent and the...
Yeah, the bull, again, let's speak on the bull. I mean, we all know what the bull represents, right? The bull represents the moon, the mother goddess, the horns, right? The crescent, right? The crescent, right? The crescent moon is what the bull represents, right? Whenever you see the crescent, you see the bull. Whenever you see the bull, you see mama, right? Look, she's even got the 3 thing going on, right? Remember the 3. 1, 2, 3. And the big one, right? 1, 2, 3. And the big one. Yeah. Plain sight, right? In plain sight. Just like what we was talking about over here. Where's it gone? Yeah, 1, 2, 3. And then the big one. Right? 1, 2, 3. And then the big one. Yeah, spot on. 1, 2, 3, and then the big one.
Yes, the bull is of course the divine bull. That's also worshipped in Egypt as well.
And here we have, oh my God, the sickle or the crescent and the star.
Right. This is you see. This imagery. I wanted to include this to show that this is actually very similar. To the.
That's Saturn again. Hold on. That's Saturn doing the moon worship. He's doing. Oh, have I got it up here again? Hold on. Just like the crescent moon again, right? With the thing. That's exactly what he's doing again. The star and the moon. But he's got his sickle, right? The star and the moon. So you got the crescent moon and the star. I like that.
To the Islamic star and crescent, and of course the communists include the hammer, which again is a pagan symbol for Saturn. Thor's hammer with lightning striking from it. Again, these are all metaphors for what people saw in the sky. They looked up to the sky, they saw lightning, right? They saw planets, they saw a crescent, they saw all these planetary objects, and they deified them. That's where it comes from. This is all based on pagan imagery.
Right. JC, any thoughts? Because here we've got other pagan and other strange ideologies with crescents and stars.
Okay, well, I had never considered the whole communist symbol to actually look very similar to Islam. Actually, well, we have the star and we have this that actually looks like a crescent moon, which is the sickle. So that's interesting. But before, when you're actually showing the the symbol of Islam, we have from Muslims always a lot of projection. They say one thing of Islam.
That's
Interesting.
This bit here, right? this hammer bit. That bit reminds me of the top hat again, right? The T, the top hat part. Just this bit here. Yeah, the T, the top hat. Have I got that anywhere? I ain't got it already. Okay.
But before, when you're actually showing the the symbol of Islam, we have from Muslims always a lot of projection. They say one thing and the opposite is true. So I just realized that when they are saying that Christians worship the cross, which they don't, what they are really saying is that they worship the moon. Obviously, we know that, and the moon is very important in the traditions. But even though
Yep.
they will say that's not the case, that's exactly what they do, and it's the central symbol of Islam. They are saying the opposite. I don't know if I've explained that correctly.
No, they do. I mean, the moon is clearly critical, just like the cross is critical to Christianity as a meaningful symbol. The moon holds the same value. But why are they focusing on a pagan symbol that has heavy association with paganism and something that is not part of biblical belief, shall we say? Because the moon symbol is always the enemy of the Jews, always the bad guys in the Bible.
Ah, the moon symbol is the enemy of the Jew. Wowzers. Enemy of the Jew. But what Jew are we talking about? Hmm? The Jew or the Jewish? The ish or the real one? I don't know. Lizzo, how you doing, my man? Good to see you. Good to see you. Solte in the building. Good to see you. Big up. Somewhere in time. Good to see you.
I find that really, really strange. So now the word hanpe, the Syriac word hanpe, meaning heathen or pagan. So what you have is you've got the Jews were calling these people who had these beliefs pagans, heathens, right? Not biblical, if you want to phrase it that way. But of course, these people said, we'll take it. We are the right religion and we'll take the name. Just like Christians, that name was an insult, but Christians said, you know what? Yeah, it fits. If the shoe fits, we'll wear it. These people just said, yeah, we'll take the name because, yeah, we are the Hanifs. We are the heathens. We are the pagans. In fact, it's the right belief, right? And they persisted in that belief. Hello, artsy fartsy and villainous and everyone. So Muslims claim that Muhammad's religion goes back before Judaism and Christianity, before, of course, we went astray. And of course, biblically, before the law of Moses were the 7 laws of Noah, and what was prior to that, according to the Muslims. But let's look at the Muslims. They have in the Quran the word Hanifan, right? Now, you'll see it's known as the word upright. You see it here. And be steadfast in faith in all uprightness, and do not be one of the polytheists, right? Except it's not uprightness. We know the word comes from pagan or heathen, right? So be upright, be Hanifan. In other words, be a heathen, right? From the biblical point of view. When I say biblical, I just mean from the perspective of Judaism/Christianity. You're looking at, no, that's pagan. But they say it's being upright. So they are using the word in a completely opposite meaning to what it was before Islam came around, right? So uprightness, you can see there, uprightness. Now, the root Hanif, pagan, in non-Islamic sources in Jewish Midrashic literature, the Hebrew root HNF, Hanif, is associated with heretics, right? In other words, the word menim. And in Syriac documents, Hanpa, plural Hanpe, denotes non-Christian pagans. Okay, so menim, as in, now this is the Hebrew, menin, but of course in Islam, you've got the menin, right? Menim, mu'minin, the believers. Ha-menim and mu'minin, right? So that's simply just a borrowing. I want to have a look at John C. Reeves' Prolegomena. Let me bring this up.
So, sounds like money.
Yeah, we're going to get to that in a second. Yeah. So I want to bring this.
Hold on. Money, that sounds familiar. I've heard that. Ain't that like Mani, that's like firmament or hand or something. Mani, that sounds familiar.
Up, and this is going to be page. We have to look up Mene. So this is called Prolegomena to a History of Islamic Manichaeism by John C. Reeves, very well-known religious historian, John C. Reeves. And let's have a look for this word Mene. And this is going to be interesting to us, right? So they speak here in this section. So they speak here of the Manichaeans shout and open their mouth infinitely wide. And they say that light is the creator and also darkness is a creator. It is insolent and wicked. So these Manichaeans believed in two gods, a good God and a bad God, right? Two opposing gods. And they speak of, now notice here, you've got Abraham ibn Daud, okay? It was during his reign, Shapurs, that Mani appeared. He maintained that there are two deities in the universe. One of them is a generator of life and brings about all the good things which exist, and the other is a destroyer. He brings about all the bad things. He invented for the Zoroastrians a Torah from his own heart, and he brought into being a mighty nation, but the king put him to death. And then, of course, we see here, they say there was a man named Mene who chose to believe in two deities, right? And they became a great nation. They were the Zoroastrians. So Mani, the Manichaeans, became, according to this, the Zoroastrians, the ones termed in Arabic al-Majus, or the Magians.
Wait, but wasn't when the Manichaeans after the Zoroastrians? The Zoroastrians came first, right? So I'm a little confused.
I'm not sure how they say, but they became a great nation. So I don't know, we'd have to look into that. But for this reason, those who believe in two deities are called Menim, after the name of Mene. Right? So now you've got...
Zoroastrians and Manichaeans do share that aspect, and actually we believed in that as well. This is also a very prominent belief in New Age esotericism, like Madame Blavatsky, Theosophy, Ariosophy, and the Rudolf Steiner stuff. Rudolf Steiner heavily believed in this. He even had statues made of the Zoroastrian god and the Zoroastrian devil. It was basically the same belief, but revamped for modern times.
Right. JC, any thoughts on this? Because now we got this word Hanpe, which means heathen or pagan, which the Muslims seem to have applied to themselves, but said, no, it means believer, right? Hanif, it means upright, as opposed to pagan. So they're contesting the meaning of this word. But then we found out that this word is related to Mene, the Manichaeans, and it's related to also Zoroastrianism. And then we discovered that the Zoroastrians have the symbol that the Muslims use. Any thoughts from you on that?
My thought is the reason why they had the same symbol, because they was all worshipping the same thing. Simple. Ain't no way around it. Same symbol because you're worshipping the same thing. All right? Crescent moon with the solar disc or the winged disc. All right? That's all it is. They all had the same thing.
Right. Well, first about the Zoroastrians, I I did research into this a long time ago, so I may be getting this wrong. But I think if you check, you will see that Zoroastrianism is supposed to be like from 3000 BC or something like that, but there is no evidence of that. So the chances are that Zoroastrianism is actually more of a modern religion, and then they try to backdate everything, just like Islam did, something very similar. In terms of this word, this is not the first case. We have lots of words in the Quran that we now know that they actually meant one thing when they were first written, like Furqan, for example, and even Muhaymin, and so many other things. And then they now tell us, no, it means something else, because they are embarrassed by it. So seeing something like this that used to mean something, and then they said, no, it means the opposite, is like, yeah, we have seen quite a few words like this, so it doesn't surprise me.
Yep. So we know that this means the word always referred to non-Christian pagans, but the Muslims are saying, no, it means believers. We're the believers. So he's saying we're not the pagans, but we know that these pagans were at one point genuinely pagan, right? So this complicates the etymology of Hanif because it retains the sense of one that is separated from Judaism and Christianity to what the Muslims claim is the pure religion of Abraham, but which we now know is, of course, much more related to paganism, Gnosticism, Manichaeanism, Zoroastrianism. So Christian apologists of the early Abbasid period retained the pagan sense of the term. They applied it to the Muslims in an attempt to demonstrate the insulting aspect of the title Hanif, by which the Muslims called themselves, and that's in Griffith's The Prophet, page 118 to 9. The pagan sense of the term was known to Muslim writers who applied the title Hunafa to such pagans as the Sabiyun. And we can see this, that's in Luxembourg, okay, as well as in Islamic sources. So the Sabiyun, the Sabians, and the Sabians come from Haran in Turkey, and the Sabians are moon-worshipping Gnostics. But of course, somehow the Muslims were applying the term Hunafa to the Sabians who were moon-worship. And of course, they say people of the book, like the Jews and the Christians. None of this makes any sense. Any thoughts, guys?
Well, it makes perfect sense once you realize that Islam is Gnostic.
It does. JC, your thoughts?
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree.
Yep. So there's something very weird about this because this takes us on a very strange journey when we look at this. Al-Yaqubi from 905 describes as Hanifs the pagans who worshipped the stars in Saul and David's time. Yaqubi Tariq, pages 49 and 50. So now I've got a Muslim author saying that no, the Hanifs are pagans. So we can go back and we can find the Hanifs are pagans, but the Muslims are now claiming that they are Hanifs, descendants of Abraham. And yet the Hanifs, we now know, are pagans who worship the moon and the stars, and as you said, astrological symbols, Emmanuel. So
planetary objects, planetary deities. To the pagans, all the planetary objects were at the same time gods. Saturn was Saturn, but at the same time it was Saturn, the deity. It was the planetary object and the deity were the same thing to them.
Right. So let's move on. So the word Hanif in the Quran, Hanif is used of Abraham as pure worship of Allah. So somehow.
Well, it's not that they was looking up at the hold on, let me, because I think I got a kind of shoe, right? Let me give you something to look at. You understand? We'll take this. And we'll take this. And we'll take a flat earth one. There's a flat earth. Where's we'll take this one. This is a good representation for flat earth. Get ready, folks. We're good to go. D'Angelo in the building. How you doing? to you down there. Salutes to you. Salutes. Uncle Rick in the building. Salutes. Max 7 in the building. Salutes. Wicked. Welcome. So, what the guy said, right, about planetary bodies in the sky, pagans, what they worship. Most of us don't really believe in the planetary bodies, right? Now, I've heard people say, even down to the maps, right? The flat earth maps, all they did was turned it into a ball, right? That's how you get the continent Antarctica, right? That's how you get the continent Antarctica. They turned it into a ball. Now the ring turns into a continent, right? That's how it goes, right? Now that's turned into a planet, right? You've turned it into a planet, right? Cool. Now that's the same for, let's go for the eye. You could possibly turn the iris into a planet, right? Anything circular or flat, right? You see, like this, how people say they turned it into a globe with the Antarctic, right? You understand where I'm going with that? You wrap it around, it turns into a ball, right? Same like with this. You wrap it around certain parts, it will turn into a ball, right? The ring becomes a ball, right? Certain elements on it becomes a ball. It's like looking up into the heavens, right? Looking up. Imagine if you're looking up at flat Earth, or even looking down, right? But their model now is a globe. They've turned it into a globe. So, and the wall becomes the continent, right? That would be like the same for your iris or something of that nature, right? Something circular becomes round like a globe. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say, right?
How Abraham was involved in pure worship of Allah as a Hanif, right? Not as the Jew or the patriarch of the Jews. And they contrasted this with idolaters, the mushrikun or the mushrikeen. That's you, basically, if you're not Muslim. So it asserts that Abraham was neither Jew nor Christian, and that the people of the book were originally commanded to worship God as Hunafa, not as idolaters or polytheists. So, in other words, they were Hanpe, Hunafa, pagans or idolaters, polytheists. And of course, they said, no, we're doing it the right way, you guys. And they flip it around. And of course, but they said that Abraham was Hunafa, right? So the people of the book, the Jews and the Christians, and they extended to the Sabians and the Zoroastrians, and even to the pagans in India. So the Muslims couldn't quite decide, but they figured that, yeah, the people of the book, so the Sabians and the Zoroastrians, all are legitimately following Allah. Isn't that fascinating stuff?
Today.
So they're all following Allah, right? He said they're all following Allah. And, Allah is one of the Islamic deities, the God, right? Allah, which is tied into the moon, right? Islam is a moon-based cult, ladies and gentlemen. Even down to Allah, right? Islam, the crescent moon, right? Or even the moon, the whole moon, the crescent moon is all there. They worship the moon before anything else. secretly they worship the mother, but they treat their woman in the worst way. They treat their women in the worst way, but they worship the mother. That is back to front. That's back to front. All right. Dome of the Rock.
This day, I mean, this is my opinion, right? But so, JC, I would love to know your opinion about that. Where did you go? Oh, he's still there. Okay.
Yeah. Hey, Angelo, I did, I got to my new job. Well, I started a new job now. The old job's finished with. We completed that building. Now we're on to a new build. So yeah, get ready for that one. I'm on the 26th floor, right? The 26th floor. High up in the clouds. But yeah, I'll keep you folks updated. Right? We'll do a few lives from the new spot. Don't worry about that. But yeah, I got to work well. Thank you.
Islam seems to be a very, very focused religion on, well, on the planetary object, on the sun, right? So originally it was other planetary objects as well, but when Saturn became less prominent in the sky, they shifted their worship to the worship of the sun. That's also why we call ancient pagans sun worshippers, and they did worship the sun, not originally, but when the sun became more prominent, and the other planetary objects less prominent, they did start to worship the sun, and you can see that very prominently in Islam. I mean, yeah, they claim they worship Allah and not idols and not anything else, and they're not pagans, but that's not true. I mean, the 5 daily prayers completely depend on the position of the sun. But correct me if I'm wrong here, but it seems very pagan to me.
Your thoughts, JC?
Yes, it does look like there is that connection, which when we look particularly at Christianity, and that's what we should be looking at, because the Quran keeps talking about Jesus as the Messiah, those things are actually not there. But in Islam, it's very, very heavy with all of these things that they really don't come from the Judeo-Christian traditions. So it does look like they have an affinity for the stars or for the moon in this case, that we don't see it in the actual Abrahamic faith.
Yeah, I mean, it's strange that the people of the book, the Jews and Christians, are joined with the Sabaeans, who are Babylonian moon-worshipping Gnostics, and the Zoroastrians. Doesn't make sense. Makes no sense. So Abraham is not a Jew, nor yet a Christian in the Quran, right? Quran 367, but he was true in faith, and he bowed his will to Allah, and he joined not gods with Allah. Okay, fine and well. They say, become Jews or Christians if you would be guided to salvation. Say thou, nay, I follow the religion of Abraham the true. He joined not gods with Allah. This last bit, he joined not gods, that just seems like it was tacked on but Hanafiya is contrasted with polytheism and the corrupted monotheism of Jews and Christians. Now, Muhammad's claim is that Abraham was righteous before Judaism was founded, that he had the true knowledge, the true religion before Judaism. So for a time, the Hanafiya was actually the name of Muhammad's religion. And now we know that that would be paganism in the eyes of Jews and Christians.
You said something interesting here. You said that he had the true knowledge. I don't know if you did that intentionally, but again, can I ask JC, is that the case? Does it depend whether or not you're a Muslim? Does that depend on whether or not you received the true knowledge, so to say?
They do have that, but that is pretty much in the traditions, when they will say, well, once you say the Shahada, when you submit, you start to really understand. And it's like, no, you're just going to parrot what your Imam tells you. That's the whole point. Is submission means you don't ask any questions and so on, and you just obey. And we have this particularly for people who grow up in Muslim countries. We know that when they are particularly children and they ask any questions at all, hey, but this seems to be a contradiction in the Quran, they get a whack in the head. So this is actually what Islam means. The thing is, in the West, they don't let us see that. but now we're speaking with people from those countries. So yeah, they will say, well, you know, you need to be a Muslim in order to understand these things. And then you ask them when they are Muslims and they have read nothing, they explore nothing, and they are not allowed to question anything. So it's the polar opposite. The whole thing about submission is nonsense.
Yeah, of course. No, it is submission. You are supposed to submit, not ask questions, just follow your leader more or less blindly, right? You're not supposed to question the knowledge, but there is knowledge. I mean, the Sunnah and the Quran, that is regarded as knowledge, right? Knowledge that you are supposed to obey and to submit to and to not question.
Don't ask
But it is knowledge.
questions. Yeah. Consume product. Don't ask questions.
That was a They Live reference, right?
That was Red Letter Media.
No. Don't you remember that movie They Live, where he puts on the glasses and then and then all the posters say consume and yeah.
It's actually Red Letter Media there as well. But okay, so Abraham is considered a Hanif Muslim. So technical use of Muslim and Islam only started at the end of 2 AH. That would be somewhere in the 8th century. Okay, that would be like early 8th century. So the terms Muslim and Islam are not synonymous with the start of Islam. These are late terms introduced more than a century after Islam was supposedly founded. So, okay. Now the word Hanif in Islamic literature, so Ibn Hisham occasionally uses Hanif as equivalent of Muslim. Pagan uses the word what we would consider pagan as the equivalent of Muslim. More frequent is the use of Hanafiya for the religion of Abraham, or supposedly Islam. And thank you, Phil. Yes, that's exactly what we covered. Hopefully you saw that. So there's a 4-tier system. There's actually 4 tiers within Islam. It's actually 4 tiers. Yeah, but you've got the masses, and you've got 3 tiers of learned people. So Hanafiya is the religion of Abraham. That would be Islam. And yes, please do remember to like, to share, and of course subscribe. And also remember, we are doing this because the Muslims are coming for your dogs. And this is a fact. They're not just coming for, it's no longer just coming for the alcohol. Now they're coming for your dogs. Seriously, people, we need to draw a line in the sand somewhere. And I think Fido needs to be that line in the sand. Emmanuel, you're nodding your head?
Yeah, we have a farm now. We have chickens, and we'll probably get pigs too. So I'm not worried about them taking my dogs as long as they let me keep the pigs.
Right. JC, any thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think they're going to let you keep the pigs. Okay, so I think dogs, they're just everywhere. It's just this kind of like noise. It's part of the whole propaganda. It's like strike fear in the hearts of those who disbelieve. It's just by saying, haha, you will not be allowed to have dogs. And then when people say, okay, so we don't want you here. Oh, you see, everyone is an Islamophobe. We didn't mean it. So it's all of this area of confusion. We see this in Islam all the time, but now we are not buying it, and we just press on with our work.
You know, they hate dogs, they hate alcohol, they hate bacon, they hate your lifestyle, they hate your bikinis, they hate your clothes, they hate your music, they hate your food, they hate everything about you, but you're Islamophobic. So, now, the word tahanuf means the adoption of the practice of Islam, or the exercise of the true faith. So, which is actually derived from tahanuth, or penance. So they've borrowed more words, and they're now claiming that tahanuf means the adoption of Islam. So actually they're taking Christian terms and they're, changing them. So we can see the use of what's called Hanafiya, and I will see it in the Sirah from Guillaume Sirat Rasulullah, or the life of Muhammad. And here, Salman the Persian told the apostle that his master in Amuriya told him to go to a place in Syria, northern Levant, where there was a man who lived between 2 thickets. Every year he used to go from one to the other, and the sick used to stand in his way, and everyone that this man prayed for was healed. And Muhammad said, ask him about this religion which you seek. So I went till I came to the place I'd been told, and I found the people that had gathered with their sick. And he came out that night, passing from one thicket to another, and the people came to him with their sick, and everyone that this man prayed for was healed. And they said here, he asked me who I was as he turned to me, and I said, God have mercy on you, and tell me about the Hanafiya, the religion of Abraham. So now the Hanafiya is the religion of Abraham. We will start looking soon at what was the religion of Abraham before he turned to Yahweh. And he replied, you are asking about something men do not ask about today. The time has come near when a prophet will be sent with this religion from the people of the Haram, an Arab, of course. Go to him, for he will bring you to this religion. And he went into the thicket. And the apostle said to Salman, if you have told me the truth, you have met Jesus, the son of Mary.
Of course,
True
I mean,
story.
who needs like ancient thousands of years old prophecies saying that someone is going to come, when you can just go and then Jesus will tell you, hey, go there and you will find the guy who has the final religion. This is not a scam. It's like, come on. This is the guy saying the story is saying, oh,
Yeah.
I met Jesus and he said that you were a prophet. And it's like, really, is there any other evidence? Is this anywhere in the old
Jesus was
scriptures?
living in Syria
No, trust me.
in the 600s. True story.
Yeah.
Wait. So Muslims believe that Jesus and Muhammad lived at the same time?
I didn't write this.
This is very
They-
confusing.
This is once you get to the Sirah, because it was written a lot later, they just put together lots of different stories. One of them was that Jesus returned to earth once a year, prayed for people, and they got healed. And I don't think that a single Muslim knows about this.
Wait, but this kind of destroys Islam because Muslims always told me. I asked them, well, why do I have to follow Muhammad and why am I not allowed to follow Jesus? They say, oh, it's because Muhammad is the final prophet. He came after Jesus. But now they're saying they came at the same time. So I'm very confused.
Me too. So this is the most famous and supposedly official biography of Muhammad. Yeah. See, the genealogy of Muhammad, traditions from the pre-Islamic era, Muhammad's childhood and early manhood. So this is supposed to be the official biography of Muhammad. And yes, just so you know, as an audience, Jesus and Muhammad were alive at the same time. Jesus lived to be 700 plus years old. Just so you know.
Okay, but then why is Muhammad the seal of the prophets and not Jesus? It's very confusing.
He's got a bloody good point and he's funny as well. I like him. Emmanuel, you're okay, Emmanuel Goldstein, you're okay.
Don't ask questions. Consume product.
I'm sorry. I'm just supposed to submit.
Yeah, exactly. So now you know from the official biography of Muhammad that Jesus was alive in the 600s at the same time as Muhammad. Of course, the two never met, but Salman met Jesus, and so there you go. And Jesus was healing people in Syria at the time that Muhammad was alive. So praise be to Allah who works in mysterious ways. All right. Yeah, this makes no sense at all. I mean, so someone's lying here. Someone's lying, and yeah, someone's lying. I'll leave it at that.
This is where you have to apply what George Orwell calls doublethink. Yeah.
This is ridiculous. So let's have a look at this. Jamil Ifada. Is that a Jewish name or a Muslim name? It sounds very Muslim-y to me. What are the sacred roots of Islam and the planned modern Islamic society? He's got a big crescent and a star there. And let's see what he says in his book. The Hunafa. And he goes, Al-Khasasina. Now, the Sassanids, Khasasina, the Sassanians, right? That takes us straight to Iran, to the Zoroastrians, but okay. Arab Christians and most Arab tribes in Hijaz and in Syria were Christians. Al-Yaqubi says the Arab tribe of Qadah came to Syria, and Tanuk bin Malik was their first king to rule Syria. He became a Christian and was appointed a king by the Roman emperor. Al-Masudi states the tribe of Wardat Salim al-Sham came to Syria, and he conquered Tanuk, and she became a Christian and was crowned to rule the Arabs in Syria by the Roman emperor. The third Arab tribe, Hassan, came to Syria, became Christians, and ruled Syria until the coming of Islam to Syria. Christians of Syria used to call the Nazarenes of Bani Israel Hunafa. Now, of course, the Nasara are often mentioned. If you've watched our shows with Odon, the Nasara are a heretical Christian Jewish sect, or Jewish Christian sect. And of course, this is what the Quran refers to, because these are not what we'd call proper Christians. These are heretics. But the Nazarenes are mentioned right here. And it says here they were called Hunafa, the plural of Hanif. Very interesting. It's an Aramaic term that denotes the deflection of that group from the true Christian religion of the Syrians. So this would be the Syrian Christians. This might be true Christians. This might be a bunch of other heretics, fine. But Muhammad Qutb Ali says numerous Arab tribes came to Syria and shared Egypt to Syria, I believe, and shared the control over Syria with Roman emperors. The most famous, blah, blah, blah. Your thoughts on this, JC? Any thoughts on this?
Yeah, it looks like the term is like nowadays we would say heretics, anybody who actually deviates from orthodoxy. But it looks like the term pagan, which we still use it to this day, was used to anyone who basically disagreed with your group. So every group would point at anybody else and says, those are pagans, those are pagans. You know, as we do now, we look at Islam and says, this is pagan, right? So
Yep.
it looks like that's the origin.
Yep. There's something, but again, this tells us these are heretics. And so there's something very odd about this, because this word comes up a lot, right? So the Christians of Syria used to call the Nazarenes of Bani Israel. So these are Jewish-influenced Christians who are clearly heretics. Odon has spoken at length about that, about these guys, and these people seem to become the Muslims. An Aramaic term denotes the deflection of that group from Christianity. Let's have a look again at the life of Muhammad. This is the official supposed biography of Muhammad that we're all supposed to believe in. And Allah, only amazing God. We don't give two shits what you believe, okay? So I really don't care about you and your, what would you call your statement of faith here? It's got nothing to do with what we're on about here. So, yeah, so thanks for playing, but now go away. Have a nice day. So they speak here of the 4 men who broke with polytheism, right? So it says, so find for yourselves a religion. And they said, for by Allah, you have none. So these 4 men went their several ways in the land, seeking the Hanafiya, or the religion of Abraham. Waraka attached himself to Christianity, and he studied its scriptures. Ubaydullah, interesting, we have Ubaydullah. This is before Islam was founded. You have the servant of Allah, the slave of Allah. You know, the name, the servant of Allah, before Islam was founded. Who was their Allah? Well, that's a strange question. He went on searching until Islam came. Then he migrated with the Muslims to Ethiopia, taking with him his wife, who was a Muslim. Habiba, okay, blah, blah. When he arrived there, he adopted Christianity, parted from Islam, and died a Christian in Ethiopia. Fascinating stuff. Right, now Zayd was determined to leave Mecca to travel about in search of the Hanafiya, the true religion of Abraham. And it says, then he went forth seeking the religion of Abraham. He questioned monks and rabbis, right? And he went the whole of Mesopotamia, Iraq area, right? Then he went through the whole of Syria until he came to a monk. And the man, it is alleged, was well instructed in Christianity. And he asked him about the Hanafiya, the religion of Abraham. And the monk replied, you are seeking a religion to which no one today can guide you. But the time of a prophet will come forth from your own country, which you have just left, has drawn near. He will be sent with the Hanafiya, the religion of Abraham. So as if Judaism didn't exist already. So stick to it, for he's about to be sent now, and this is his time. But Zayd had sampled Judaism and Christianity and was not satisfied with either of them. Any thoughts so far, guys?
Well, this obviously mirrors what Manichaeism teaches. You know, I told you about this before. They have like this stick, and this was our stick as well. We would always tell people, you know, we would never go to people and say, oh, we believe something else than you believe. You know, and we would never tell people, oh, we are Gnostics. We would no. They would always tell people, no, 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 we believe what you believe, and your prophet is the true prophet, but your prophet is not the final prophet. No, 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 no. And what you believe, the knowledge you have in your religion, that is correct, but there is more knowledge. There is secret knowledge that your clergy are keeping from you. Oh yeah, the clergy is so evil. Oh, the Catholic Church so evil. Oh, you know, they're intentionally keeping this knowledge from you. And and we are the true Christians. We are the restoration, and we have the true prophet, which is a prophet we totally made up, but he is the seal of the prophet, and he restores the religion to its origin. So that's how that's and Manichaeism did that as well, and that's why Manichaeism spread like wildfire, because they would always adopt all the prophets from all the other religions. They would always claim, oh, those would be their prophets as well, and that's what we see here. You know,
for instance,
this is kind of like, to me, this reads like Manichaean propaganda. Where then the answer to this is, oh, here's the new prophet, here's Mani, or here's Muhammad, here's, you know, and he's the seal of the prophet, he's what you have been looking for, he's going to restore the religion to its origins back again. And we taught this, the Manichaeans taught this. This is how they spread.
It's the same playbook. I mean, for instance, Muslims claim that Abraham was a Muslim. That everyone knows this is false, because everybody knows Abraham was a Mormon. Right, JC?
Yeah.
Abraham was a Mormon since when? Okay.
This is very interesting. This thing that you have just read reminds me of the way that Odon describes the narrative, that they created one story and then that creates plot holes. So they have to create another story to fix the plot hole, then you create more plot holes. In here, this account is saying, so Zaid wants to know what happens with Abraham, and then he travels around. But then we have in the narrative that later people believe that Abraham had been to Mecca and all of those things, which Zaid would be like, no, I've been traveling around. I know where Abraham was. Everything was up there. It took me months to get there. He never traveled here. So they would create these stories because they think like this, they can persuade people by saying, oh, you see, this guy investigated and he realized Islam is the true religion. But when then you look what the narrative says about the origins of Islam, it doesn't make any sense. You realize that they're just making up a story in order to tell people, oh, you see, we have actually checked, and trust me, bro, this is the final religion. Like Emmanuel said, is we have the last prophet and you need to obey him. And in order to obey him, you need to obey me, because I'm going to tell you what he said. And there you have it. This is not a scam.
Yeah. So look, so seriously, when Muslims tell you Abraham was a Muslim, just tell them, no, Abraham was a Mormon, okay? Or if you prefer, he was a Buddhist. I don't know. Just take your pick. Doesn't really matter, because it's equally stupid.
Joseph Smith is the seal of the prophets. I mean, he obviously is the last prophet. He came way later than Muhammad, so obviously he must be true.
Yep. No, exactly. You know. So let's continue. So Abraham, that's this word ivri, right? That's the Hebrew word ivri, right? Abram, the ivri, right? Ivrit is a Hebrew word, but of course in Arabic you've got the ifrit. Abram, the ivrit, the Hebrew, to cross over from the other side, right? A descendant. Some say to cross over the river and so on. Abraham received news that his cousin Lot had been taken away as a prisoner of war. A fugitive brought the news to Abram, the Hebrew, Abram ha-ivri. Genesis 14:13, and there came one that had escaped and told Abram, the Hebrew. All right. Now, biblical scholar Nahum Sadna conclude that Hebrew was really an ethnic designation, similar to Canaanite and Moabite. Theories abound. By the time of King David, 3,000 years ago, the term Hebrew had largely disappeared. For most of recorded history, the descendants of Abraham the Hebrew were known as Jews. Now, the word Chthonian, right, of or relating to the deities, spirits, and beings dwelling under the earth, like gnomes or stuff like that, right? In Greek mythology, Chthonian refers to beings that inhabit the underworld, considered to be the dark counterparts of the Olympians who live on Mount Olympus. Now, of course, in Islam, the word Ivrit becomes Ifrit, right? Expressing power, cunning, and insubordination. You see, these are evil, nasty spirits that live underground, Jews, right? And this word occurs only.
He said, evil, nasty spirits that live underground, Jews. How dare you?
Once in the Quran in the sense of rebellious, people who don't listen to Allah, damn it. Later, it came to mean a class of particularly powerful underground forces, those nasty, formidable and cunning. In the popular tales, the Ifrit is a jinn of enormous size, formed basically of smoke. It has wings and it haunts ruins and lives. They're just trying to insult the Jews. Let's be honest about that. So they're simply taking the word that defines the Jews and they're insulting them, getting rid of them and saying, we are the true Jews. That's really what's happening here. Okay? The term may be used of humans and even animals, and it means people who are cunning, right? Yes?
There's a lot of Gnostic groups that do regard the Jews as the archons. I don't know, maybe I should explain that. The archons are basically the Gnostic version of demons. They were, if you've seen The Matrix, they're basically Agent Smith trying to keep us trapped in our prison, and they're the minions. They're the minions of the evil Jehovah, yes, because Jehovah is the evil Jewish God, and he is very evil, and he is the demiurge, and he has his minions, and they are called the archons, and they are controlling the world and keeping us trapped here, yes.
Yep. But we know there's only one group that wants to take your dogs, and that's the Muslims. Don't let them take your dogs. Draw a line in the sand. You know what to do. Now, why Abraham wasn't a Christian or a Jew? Well, let's have a look at what the Gnostics thought. And since we are seeing all these connections to Islam and Gnostics and other things, let's look at John 8:44. You are of your father, the devil, and the lusts of your father you will do. He was a murderer from the beginning and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it. That's from the King James Version, John 8:44. Now, before Islam, there were pseudo-biblical Gnostics who also reinterpreted the Bible the way the Muslims do. John 8:44 has been a major source of Gnostic hostility to the Jews. In fact, it's even used today by academics. It's still something that's around today. And of course, it was hostility to the Jews and to Christianity. And of course, they claim that John 8:44 is a pro-Gnostic verse. It actually denigrates the Jews and says, no, you should be like us Gnostics. And Jesus then supposedly affirms that the Jews serve Iyal Dabaoth, who is the Gnostic God, who is the anti-God, the dark God, as opposed whatever. None of this makes sense.
Yeah, it's basically the same as the demiurge. Some call him the demiurge, some call him Yalda Dingsbums, but at the end of the day, they're actually referring to Jehovah. They're demonizing Jehovah.
Yep. Now, anti-Semites make the same claims while ignorant of the historical source of the claim, right? Let's have a look at that. So they want to undermine the passage and legitimize their position by asking if John 8:44 reads, you are of your father, the devil, right? Which is what we know from the Bible, or you are of the father of the devil, which is different. Not your father is the devil, but you are from the father of the devil. In other words, there's another God greater than Satan. And apparently they're saying that the Bible says, Jesus is saying, you are from the father of the devil. Now, of course, there are groups that claim that Jesus has a brother. His name is Satan. You may have heard of that guy. So, but yeah, this gets very confusing. But you are of your father, the devil. But that was the claim that the Gnostics made. Modern scholars persist in this. So using this revisionist framework, the conclusion that they reach is that Jesus is not a Jew, never was a Jew, right? The God of the Old Testament of Abraham and Moses, whom we call Yahweh, is Satan. So you see, Yahweh is the father of Satan. So Jews worship the father of Satan, who's worse than Satan. So this goes all backwards and upside down. And then, of course, you get to Let's have a look at this book from the 1930s, Christ Was Not a Jew, written by a wonderful American Protestant, as they all are. It's called An Epistle to the Gentiles by Jacob Elon Connor. Emmanuel, you want to say a few words?
Yeah, it's horrible.
Hey, Emmanuel is itching, bro. Hey, if you focus on Emmanuel, he's doing some crazy antics. It's hilarious, bro. Big up Emmanuel.
I've heard all this before. My mother actually believed most of this, sadly. And this is how the National Socialists argued as well. A lot of people don't know this, but the National Socialists actually established their own religion, their own form of Christianity in Germany.
Positive Christianity, it was called.
Yeah, they had their own. Well, to be more precise, they had their own form of Protestant. How do you say this in English?
Protestantism.
Exactly. They had their own form of that, and they just threw away the entire Old Testament because they thought, "Oh, that's
exactly that."
and they changed. Think about that. They changed the Bible. They wrote their own Bible.
Yes.
And now in this is true. You can look this up on Wikipedia. Yep. The Nazis had their own version of Christianity and their own version of the Bible, and they changed all. You know, every part in the Bible where it indicates that Jesus was Jewish, they just threw that out. They just said, "Oh, that's Jewish propaganda. Oh, we just gonna change that here and blah, blah, blah."
Emmanuel, let's not get into that at length. I'll touch on that.
So, what religion was he in the Jewish Bible? I mean, the German Bible, the Nazi Bible, rather. All right, that's wild. Okay, I didn't know they had their own Bible.
Briefly, I've actually covered that at length in other episodes, but let's talk about this guy, this good Christian here, this great Christian, Jacob Elon Connor. Right, and he writes in his book, a couple of passages I've taken out. JC, before I go on, anything you want to add to this whole crazy conversation?
Well, something that it's just funny. The Christian Prince has now been using, I've heard him a couple of times, saying to Muslims, so you see, the Quran says that Allah sent messengers that spoke their own languages. And Jesus was given the Injil. Injil is Greek. That means that Jesus was sent to the Greeks. And he says that, and it messes with people's heads because they have been programmed to think Moses was sent to the Jews, Jesus was sent to the Jews, Muhammad was sent to all humankind, when it's just a misreading of what the Quran says, is that Moses was sent to the Jews, Jesus was sent to all mankind. They just turned that into Muhammad. But I really like when they get confused when they hear that if he was given the Injil, then he would be speaking to the Greeks. And yeah, that messes with people's heads. I like it.
Fair enough. So Mr. Connor here says, what does Harnack say? It is admitted by a Jewish source that the most outstanding Christian theologian of recent times, Adolf Harnack, remember, the most outstanding Christian theologian of modern times, in his latest work, rejected the hypothesis of the Jewish origin of Christ and of Christ's doctrine. Virtually every word that Jesus taught is made to be of permanent and universal humanitarian interest. The messianic features are abolished entirely, and virtually no importance is attached to Judaism. So Mr. Harnack, who is the most outstanding Christian theologian of recent times, strips out all of Jesus's messianic features. He abolishes that, and he says Jesus has nothing to do with Judaism. And he goes on, he says, the truth demanding recognition is that Christ, as the Son of Man, was a Galilean. Maybe he means a Palestinian. How? I don't know. And the Galileans were not Jews. He was maybe, you know what, Jesus, everyone knows Jesus was Mesopotamian. Emmanuel, your quick thoughts on that before I move on.
Yeah, As a German, I of course agree with my Führer. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. JC, your thoughts?
Yeah, that's just absolutely insane. It's
You say as a German, I agree with my Führer. Yes. Oh my
like
Lord.
they said, well, the Bible actually begins with John 1, but forget about everything that happened before. Forget every single prophecy, every single tradition, every single thing that they do as a foreshadow of the Messiah. Ignore all of that. It has nothing to do. It's like, what are you doing? That's
The
not
Ten
how this works.
Commandments. We got that from the Mesopotamians, whoever they were. Maybe the Palestinians. Heck, I don't know. But let's continue. Let's continue. This is Mr. Harnack over here. Adolf Harnack, the greatest Christian theologian of his time. And of course, he was a Lutheran. Because if you've watched my channel and seen my discussions on Martin Luther, oh God, let me calm down. Because Martin Luther was the biggest theological fraud in history.
Uh-oh.
But let me continue. Luther, Marcion, and the Protestants, and Mr. Harnack over here. The most famous of the liberal Protestant scholars in Germany in the 20th century was Lutheran theologian Adolf Harnack. In What is Christianity, written in 1900, he said that Jesus was a historical figure who taught ethical principles. Jesus was just an ethical teacher, and Jesus said that we need to be loving and compassionate. So he emphasized the importance of love and behave, Emmanuel, behave. And he emphasized the importance of love and compassion. That was Jesus's message. Don't get involved with miracles and messianic stuff. No. And of course, Mr. Harnack, the world's greatest 20th century theologian, said that he rejected all supernatural aspects of Jesus's life. This is a Lutheran Christian theologian, the greatest theologian of the 20th century, saying, yeah, all those miracles, that's all, get rid of that crap. Well, I can't have that crap going on in the Bible. So Jesus's miracles and Jesus's divinity, out the door. And he focused on Jesus's moral teachings as interpreted by Mr. Harnack. And he taught that Jesus was a human being, just a human. Didn't Muhammad teach something similar? And he was deeply influenced by the Jewish prophets. And Jesus saw himself as a reformer of Judaism. That sounds kind of familiar. Any thoughts?
Wow. Well, I wonder what his sources are, because all of the sources that we have is the Bible, and he just says, well, no to all of that. But let me tell you what really happened. Was this guy a prophet? Peace be upon him.
I think so. So he portrayed Jesus, right? So his portrayal of Jesus was criticized as, of course, a departure from Christian beliefs, right? But his ideas had significant impact on liberal theology in the 20th century. So what he advocated was removing the Old Testament from the Bible. Let's get rid of that crap. You know, all those books from like Moses and Jacob and all those old farts. Just chuck that out. Just get rid of that. And he did so before the National Socialists came around. Although maybe who knows, Emmanuel? Maybe he and they were friends.
I mean, if it was in the 1930s, I mean, the National Socialists were already around.
Yep.
I mean, they were not necessarily in power yet, but they were very much around. And also the movements that from which National Socialism originated were also very much around. So I would be very surprised if he wouldn't have been influenced by these movements.
Yep. So at the end of World War I, he tried to resuscitate the 2nd century heretic Marcion, who had taught that the God of love in the New Testament had no relationship to the imperfect God of the Old Testament. You see, because you have a good God and you have an evil God. You have a God of light and a God of darkness, just like the Zoroastrians had. Isn't that fascinating? And that Christianity and Judaism had to be totally separated. You see? And because this is all Jewish carnal law, because you see, only the spirit is true, because the flesh is evil and we're Gnostics. And that's exactly what Gnostics believe. But this man's a Lutheran theologian. he follows Luther. Sorry, no, he doesn't follow Luther. He follows Jesus, and that's why it's called Lutheran, because Luther was something like that. And Harnack said that the Old Testament as a unity lies below the level of Christianity, because the Bible is the true word of God, except get rid of that frickin' Old Testament, because we don't need that crap, because he's a Lutheran. And he also wrote regarding Martin Luther not removing the Old Testament from Protestantism. He said, what an unburdening of Christianity and its doctrine it would have been if Martin Luther had taken this step. Maybe that tells us something about Martin Luther that we still need to learn. But nonetheless, the latter's emphasis on gospel over law meant that Luther's concept of faith is the one that stands nearest to the Marcionite concept. Isn't that just fascinating? Any last words before I move on?
Okay, well, yes. So this guy then, Prophet Harnack, said that he was a Christian and Jesus didn't perform any miracles. He was not God incarnate. He didn't die on the cross and resurrected. He was not even a Jew, and he's a legit Christian historian. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Good stuff. So, number one, winning. So, yeah, I just thought that's a very fascinating concept of ideas that merge over there. Now, Maimonides. So Maimonides is a Jewish sage. He's one of the top 2 or 3 most famous Jewish rabbis. And he says Abraham was a Sabaean before he followed Yahweh. It is well known that the patriarch Abraham was brought up in the religion and the opinion of the Sabaeans. And he says these are ignoble remnants of the nations left in remote corners of the earth, like the savage Turks in the extreme north and the Indians in the extreme south. These are remnant Sabaeans who once filled the earth. And of course, the people of the book, as far as Muhammad was concerned, are Sabaeans as well. Isn't that fascinating? In their writings, Noah was rebuked and imprisoned because he worshipped God, and with many other accounts about him. And the Sabaeans contend that Seth differed from his father Adam as regards the worship of the moon. The Sabaeans were very interested in the moon, you see, because they followed the true religion, and Abraham and Adam just got it all wrong. Any thoughts before I go on?
Well, the 2 main sects in Gnosticism are the Cephians and the Valentinians.
Right, so we've got a little internal war going on with these Gnostic groups, but yeah, they're all
they hate each other even more than they hate the demiurge.
Actually, there is this thing. I had never thought about this before until now you said this, Lloyd, which is the Quran actually says that the Zoroastrians and the Sabians, they have nothing to fear. Actually, they put them together with the Jews and Christians. I mean, no one in the Abrahamic faith would do that, not in a million years. But the Quran actually says, the Jews, the Christians, the Sabians, and the Magians, they have nothing to fear. And it's like, no, this is just combining different religions. And 2 that are actually taken in those verses are pagans. So that's very interesting. It's no longer Abrahamic faith.
Yep. So there's something very...
So hold on. I wonder if the Sabaeans are referenced in the... what's that movie again? What's the movie? The Explorer, Indiana Jones, right? I wonder if that's meant to be referencing the Sabaeans, because they're some type of raiders, right? The Sabaeans are the raiders, like raiders of the Ark, right? Raiding the moon worshippers, right? Raiders of the Ark. The Ark is the moon, in case you didn't know, right? The lens, the Ark. So the Sabaeans are tied into the raiders of the Ark, right? They're raiders. And they're men of stature also. Okay. That's good stuff. Good stuff, Lloyd. Good stuff.
Odd going on here. So when Abraham, the pillar of the world, the 5 pillars of Islam, and those pillars we started off in episode 1, when he appeared, he became convinced that there is a spiritual divine being, which is not a body nor a force residing in a body. And the great book on this subject is the book called On the Nabatean Agriculture, translated by Ibn Washiyah. And he says, I shall explain why the Sabaeans had their religious doctrines written in a work on agriculture. The book is full of the absurdities of idolatrous people and with those things to which the minds of the multitude easily turn and adhere. It speaks of talismans, magical talismans. Now this Ibn Washia is a Muslim name, good grief. And he speaks on the Nabatean. That's Petra. That's Petra. Magical talismans, the means of directing the influence of the stars. Now we're back to astrological deities, witchcraft, spirits, and demons that dwell in the wilderness, the jinn. And there occur also in the book great absurdities, which are ridiculous in the eyes of intelligent people. So, okay, let's go on to Abraham and the pillars of Yahweh, right? And the pillars that Yahweh hates. In Genesis, Abraham and his descendants worship in a manner that includes mention of trees and pillars, right? These are upright trees, upright, that word Hanifan. We come back to upright, as was mentioned in the Quran. They use the word upright. Israelite Religions, an archaeological and biblical survey by Richard S. Hess. And in the book Deuteroscopy 16:21, you shall not plant for yourself any tree as a wooden image near the altar which you build for yourself to the Lord your God. In other variants, it says, you shall not set up a sacred pillar, which the Lord your God hates. And do not set up holy stone pillars. The Lord your God hates them. If you saw episode 1, you will find that the Yemeni...
Okay, sorry. Excuse me. And they'll star worship as well, right? They worship the star. What was known to be the biggest star in the sky? The moon, right? That's the biggest star in the sky. The biggest body. This is fascinating. I love this shit.
Moon religions all had stone pillars as part of their sacred worship. And Islam has
stone pillars. That too. Yes, I told you. The stone is worshipped more than, the world itself. Imagine that. The stone. The stone. What is stone? The rock, the mountain. Right? The rock, the mountain, the stone.
Sacred pillars, the 5 pillars of Islam. Any thoughts, guys, before I go on?
Well, but doesn't it also have actual pillars or stone structure? I mean, obviously, I'm not allowed to go to Mecca, but I remember there being, well, obviously, there's the Kaaba, but which is a stone, which is a sacred stone. But there's also stone. There's like these stone structures you throw stones at. You know that better, Tracy.
Yep. Isn't that fascinating? Yeah. And they, So in Genesis and Exodus, okay. So if patriarchal religion corresponds to some kind of historical reality, then presumably this is some form of genuinely ancient pre-Yahwistic religion, right? So they speak here of there are religions before that was worshipped before they turned to Yahweh, the God of the Bible. So let's go to where Abraham came from. Any thoughts you want to add, JC, before we go on?
No, I'm good.
Okay, so there's a lot of different things we're putting down here, but I want to talk about ancient pagan religions, pillars, and so on, and the geographic region on earth where Abraham came from. And Muhammad is saying, no, Abraham wasn't a Jew. He followed the religion before he supposedly became a Jew. Let's look at the religion that we found at the time or in the region where Abraham was before Abraham became a Jew. What religions did we have? Well, all of it's pagan, all of it's astrological, but let's go to Ur. Okay, is Ur in Iraq or is Ur in Turkey? Now, according to some Jewish and Muslim sources, Edessa or Urfa is Ur-Kasdim, or the hometown of Abraham. Now, Rendsburg, interesting, this archaeologist, he points out that this location makes much better sense of the biblical references. If Terah, Abraham's father, and his family left Ur-Kasdim to travel to Canaan, but they stopped en route in Haran, then Ur-Kasdim should be north of Haran because they come.
No, thank you, Debs. Thank you. I appreciate you. You always let me know you're watching on the replay, right? So much love to you, man. It's people like you we do this for, right? People like yourself. I'm just happy you're able to catch a live with us, right? I'm just happy you're here with us. So salutes to you, much love. Lay low. 420 if you got that stuff, you know.
Come down from where they are to Haran, and they make a left on the map along the coast through Syria, through Canaan, and on to Israel, what we call Israel today. Now, 12 kilometers or 7 miles northeast of the city is the famous Neolithic Göbekli Tepe, the world's oldest known temple from about 10,000 BC, or maybe even older. There are older temples than this, right? This area was part of a network of the first human settlements where the agricultural revolution took place. We just heard about the Nabatean agriculture. So interesting. Because of its association with Jewish, Christian, and Islamic history and the legend according to which it was the hometown of Abraham, Urfa, which is on the border of Syria, Turkey, is nicknamed the City of Prophets. Now, there was more than one city called Ur. I could find something like 5 or 6. So the idea of Ur in Mesopotamia, in Iraq specifically, is actually something that came up in the 1930s by a very famous archaeologist. And before that, people didn't have that view. The view was it was north, not down in the south. And it actually doesn't make sense that it's down in the south. It makes much more sense to be up in Turkey, on the Turkey-Syria border. Now, places named Ur, or places linguistically close enough to be a candidate for Abraham's Ur, such as Ura, have turned up in numerous ancient inscriptions, like Ugarit on the Mediterranean coast in modern Syria, at Nuzi, the northeast of Iraq, at Alak, Turkey, 100 miles north of Ugarit, and most recently in the archive from Ebla in northeast Syria. All of these are concentrated in the north Syria-Turkey border. The Ebla tablets have references to places called Ur, Ura, and Urau. Unfortunately, none of these can be located with precision, but the find spots of the tablets indicate the cities were somewhere in central northern Syria or southern Turkey. Again, Turkey-Syria border. All of them relatively close to Haran. And Haran is where these moon-worshipping Gnostics came from. Haran is where Abram, as he was then called, went with his father Terah after they left Ur in Genesis 11:31. And there is no dispute regarding the location of Haran. It is an ancient city, well known, well documented. And the Turkish government, of course, has denied excavation in Haran, just like they do in Mecca. Isn't that odd? Any thoughts, guys?
Just that it's quite far from Mecca.
Yeah, it's definitely not in Mecca. Definitely not in Mecca. Yeah, it's a little far north of Mecca. Now, the southern Ur is on the west bank of the Euphrates. Now, this is significant because it sheds light on the biblical story of Abraham. We're going to spend a lot of time on Abraham and his son Isaac and his grandson Jacob. In Genesis 24, when Abraham was old, he sends his servant to the land of my birth, which is believed to be Ur, okay? And he finds a wife for Isaac. The servant goes and finds Rebekah, the sister of Laban, the first person to greet the servant. Later, Jacob, Isaac's son, also traveled to work for Laban, presumably in Ur. After working for Laban for 20 years, Jacob flees back to Canaan, but he has to cross the Euphrates to do so, according to Genesis 31. He has to cross the Euphrates. However, if southern Ur is located on the west bank of the Euphrates, then it wouldn't be necessary for him to cross the river because it's already on the other side. So we already have a problem with the southern Iraq Ur versus the biblical account. There's already a geographical conflict. There's a contradiction. So he would not need to have crossed the river to reach Canaan. Therefore, it is unlikely that Abraham's servant was sent to the southern Ur in Iraq. Remember, that's a 1930s idea. For hundreds of years before, thousands of years, Ur was assumed to be in the north, not the south. So, because this does not align with the biblical account, so the southern Ur cannot be the place that Abraham sent his servant. So, Jesus said to all the people, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Long ago, your ancestors, including Terah, the father of Abraham and Nahor, lived beyond the Euphrates River and worshipped other gods. But I took your father Abram from the land beyond the Euphrates and led him throughout Canaan, and I gave him many descendants. I gave him Isaac." So, any comments before I go on?
Not from me. I'm good.
Okay, so I don't have to, let me just see Here, these are the three pillars, just so by the way, inside the Kaaba. These are the pillars inside the Kaaba. So there are multiple pillars inside the Kaaba because pillars are very important to Islam. Yeah, thanks for that, Andrew. Yeah, the Muslims do hide evidence, as it disproves. Okay, so let me continue then. Okay, we don't have to spend too much time on this. We don't have to like dwell on this too much. Okay, but this means Haran was en route from Ur the Chaldees to Canaan. So it says that Terah took Abram and went out from Ur of the Chaldee to go to the land of Canaan. They came to Haran. Now, if you were starting in the south, and we'll see on the maps later, if you're starting from Iraq in the south, you would simply go left, and you wouldn't have to go north up here to get to Haran and then come back down and go around to Israel. You would simply just make a left. Understand? It also doesn't make sense from that perspective. Okay? Let's have a look again at Göbekli Tepe, because we want to look at the oldest religion, the religion before Abraham. What was the religion before Abraham? Well, this is Göbekli Tepe. Okay? This are just some of the...
Yeah, what was the religion before Abraham? Maybe you can find out tonight. I don't know. Let's find out together. Maybe they can show us together.
Tepes in that region. Karahan Tepe is even older than Göbekli Tepe. There's loads and loads and loads of tepes, these temples, right, in that region. And these are very old religions. Let's have a look. Ancient site, older than Göbekli Tepe, unearthed in Turkey. Okay, Buntuklu Tarla in southeastern Mardin are around 1,000 years older than Göbekli Tepe. Right, here's Göbekli Tepe. Here, this is even an even older site. There's tons of these old sites. This is just some of them. Karahan Tepe is here, and here we got even more old sites. Now, what do these old religions look like? Well, let's see. Let's go have a look at a 9,000-year-old shrine in Jordan, what's known as a Silim. Does anyone know of these three letters? Are they part of any religion that we know, guys? Do the root letters SLM have any?
Yeah, I can't imagine.
I kind of see Islam, Salam, Salam, Jewish. Salam, Jewish.
No, especially since we haven't invented what do you call this? Well, there's you know that especially in Arabic they have certain types of letters, but then they don't have certain types of letters. So if you were to write Islam without the I and the A, what do you call I and A?
So it's okay, yeah. Islam was Salam. Islam was
My
definitely.
English is bad.
Oh, wait. Are you saying that
Hey,
you take you have the Razm and
yeah.
you get S, L, and M? JC, your thought, please. I'm getting confused here.
Yeah, well, good thing that Andrew has just given us the answer. So, yeah, it does seem like Islam, obviously, when we come to Arabic much later, you would have the initial Aleph that makes a sound, but that would be, if we were looking at that in Arabic, would be Salam or something like that. So the same root as, Islam.
Yeah.
So I said Salam, yeah.
So guys, I know I'm throwing out a lot of threads right now. We'll tie all these threads together, but all of this stuff actually matches up. I just thought I need to throw this out there. We need to just lay the groundwork. We're going to do a lot of stuff here with Abraham, and but so didn't the WEF buy? Yeah, they did shut down the excavations at Göbekli Tepe. They planted trees on everything. Yeah.
Wait, the World Economic Forum did that?
I don't know if the world, but
why would they do that? What do they have to do with it? Makes no sense.
I don't know.
Why would they do that?
So anyway, let's have a look at the word slime. Yeah, villainous nails it again. The word slime. Yeah. So the word SLM. Let's have a look. This is a 9,000-year-old shrine, and what do you see? Pillars. and graven idols. Isn't that in the Ten Commandments? Thou shalt not make thyself graven idols and worship them. These are what graven idols, and there's a pillar.
I think there's a temple with statues like this, the eye temple or something like that.
In the back. Here is a graven idol. Here's a graven idol. Here's a graven idol. These are all pillar idols that Abraham was told not to worship. But of course, these are known as synonyms. And if you put the vowels in, I mean, let's try. I mean, we could put some vowels in, and maybe we'll come up with what could the vowels be? Let's see. It could be E, S, L, Eslim maybe. How about O, S, L, U, Oslam? How about U, S, L, Uslim? I don't know, man. Let's try Islam.
It's a mystery.
I'm going with the fourth one. I'm going with that one. So now this is Jabal Kashbiya. French and Jordanian archaeologists have made a unique discovery that sheds light on daily life and belief in prehistoric Levant, the northern, oh my God, graven idols and pillar statues from the Neolithic, 75 kilometers east of Al-Jafar in Jordan. And look how close it is to Petra. It's right there. Just a hop, skip, and a jump from good old Petra. Oh boy, any thoughts?
Yeah. Yes, yes, on the previous one, I didn't actually notice that in these images, these pillars, they had actually done like eyes and nose. That's actually quite cute. That's very interesting. But it reminds me of the story in Islam about Moses putting his clothes on top of a stone, of a rock, and then the rock runs away with his clothes, and Moses runs after it. So I don't know if there's a connection there, but the fascination with pillars and stones and stuff, the stones also greet Muhammad when they see him. Assalamu alaikum, Muhammad, when they see him, and so on. So they do have this weird fascination with these things that we see on the screen.
Yeah, cute little faces here. As you can see, these are gods that are inscribed on the rock. They have faces. They're trying to make the rock into a god. So let's have a look at Abraham. So a brief synopsis.
Trying to make the rock into a god. I mean, the rock into a god. The rock, the mountain, right? The rock. This is your moon worship. This is the god right here. Right. Bow to his feet.
Synopsis of Abraham's life. Right, we'll go like another 10 or 15 minutes, guys. Abraham is born Abram in Ur in Babylonia, 1,948 years according to Jewish tradition after creation, right? Roughly 1800 BC. He's the son of Terah, an idol merchant. He questions the faith of his father while he was young, and he comes to believe that the universe is the work of a single creator. And he teaches this belief. Now, Abraham tries to convince his father, Terah, of the folly of idol worship. We've just seen these stone idols. One day, he's left alone to mind the store. He takes a hammer, he smashes all the idols except the largest one. Allahu Akbar. Akbar means my idol is bigger than yours. My idol is bigger. And of course, the biggest idol smashed all the other idols, and you were left with just a mono idol. Isn't that an interesting point, JC?
Yeah, that's true. That's actually very true. You destroy all the idols, you keep one, and then that's your god.
Yeah, there you go. The biggest idol. You put the hammer in the hand of the largest idol, and his father returns. He asks what happened. He says,
The biggest idol, in other terms, the biggest star, right? The biggest star, right? They worship the biggest idol, the biggest star. To the human eye, the biggest star in the sky or the biggest celestial body would be the moon, right? The moon, the biggest god.
He put the hammer in the hand of the largest idol, and his father returns. He asks what happened. He says the idols got into a fight, and the big one smashed all the other ones. And his father said, don't be ridiculous. These idols have no life or power. They can't do anything. And Abraham said, then why do you worship them? And I believe there's a story in Islam, in the Hadiths or whatever, where Muhammad, there's a similar story to this. Eventually, the one true creator that Abraham worshipped called him and made him an offer. Leave his home and his family, and God would make him a great nation and bless him. Abraham accepts, and the Brit, or the covenant between God and the Jewish people, is established in Genesis 12. Now, the idea of Brit is fundamental to Judaism. A covenant or contract with God, it involves rights and obligations on both sides. We have obligations to God, God has obligations to us, right? And the terms become more explicit over time until the time of the giving of the Torah. Abram is...
Ah, no way. Hey, have you ever seen a wolf moon? Have you ever seen when it's at its lowest point? That moon is humongous. I've never seen the sun bigger than the moon. Chills. Let's have it right, my man. We've never seen the sun bigger than the moon. Never. You go look at a wolf moon. I seen a wolf moon the other day. That shit blew my mind away. I had no idea the moon could appear that big. I had no idea.
Subjected to 10 tests of faith to prove worthiness for this covenant. Leaving home is one of these trials, otherwise known as the Hijrah. Doesn't that make sense, JC? Okay, looks like I'm alone here. So, maybe there's someone else on the other end of this. But the Hijrah, doesn't that make sense, Emmanuel?
Yes, it makes sense to me, but also I don't really know very much about this.
Okay, but the idea of the Hijrah, that was the first Hijrah of the Muslims, the first test. JC, any thoughts on that, if you're around? And then Abraham becomes a nomadic, where he adopts a nomadic lifestyle. He travels towards the land of Israel, and God promises the land to Abraham's descendants, and he's referred to as a Hebrew or Ivri. Abra means exalted father, but Abraham, when his name changes, means the father of a multitude. Now, Hagar is the daughter of Pharaoh, supposedly, given to Abram during his travels in Egypt. She bears Abram a son called Ishmael, who, according to Muslim and Jewish tradition, is the ancestor of the Arabs, Genesis 16. When he's 100 and Sarai, his wife, is 90, God promises Abram a son by Sarai. God changed Abram's name to Abraham, the father of many, and Sarai to Sarah, from my princess to princess. And Sarah bore Abram a son, Isaac, in Hebrew, Yitzchak, from the word laughter, meaning Abraham's joy at having a son in his own old age. And Isaac is the ancestor of the Jewish people. Abraham is the founding patriarch of the Jewish people and the first monotheist. He's called Avraham Avinu, our father, Abraham, signifying the physical ancestor of the Jewish people. Of course, the Muslims were around calling him something else at that point in time in history, because everyone knows the Muslims were around, and they'll even show us the mosques from that period, won't they? No, they frickin' won't. And the founder of the covenantal relationship with God, and he's the grandfather of Jacob. Jacob is renamed Israel. Right. Let's continue. So, Abraham's journey. Now, in Sharia, the Islamic law makes explicit claim that Islam is Gnostic. I've covered that in the Reliance of the Traveler. It says over and over that Islam is a Gnostic religion. Now, Gnosticism involves revision of history, an alternate interpretation of reality. Islam, of course, as we all know, is revisionist. It alters biblical figures and events that stem from much earlier traditions. It borrows and distorts them. The sources of Islam predated by hundreds of years at a minimum. Now, archaeological discoveries, of course, validate the biblical narrative, but not so with the Quran, because the Quran has no archaeological value whatsoever. Abraham migrated from Ur, Mesopotamia, lower Euphrates, according to the standard narrative at least, north to Haran, although a proper, I think, archaeological understanding, he went south and then west. Haran is also the name of Abraham's deceased brother. Now, if you go to that region, right, Haran, several towns are named after people that are from the family of Abraham. He then goes to Canaan, later renamed to Israel, and Babylon worshipped numerous gods. And in Haran, there was a moon god called Sin or Shin, among other names. So now the story is here, right? He starts in Ur, and here's Iran. Now, notice if he was going to go to Canaan, he would just go left. So it made much more sense for him to be up here, come down to Haran, and then just swing left here. So the story of going across the river doesn't make good sense here. Okay, any comments? JC, you're back. Did you hear what I said earlier?
Yeah, sorry, I heard that about the Hijra. Yes, about the. I actually thought more about the hero's journey because it's him sent out on this great adventure. Now, the Bible tells us where he was in all of those cities. There is nothing to do, of course, with Mecca, even near that area. So that's interesting. On the previous slide where you showed about revisionist, I think I wanted to actually do a show with a guy who is very knowledgeable about how Islam has actually changed, and hopefully that will happen. So Islam is 100% revisionist, and they say to every single Muslim, this is what it's been from the beginning, and it's nothing like that. However, for us who are trying to understand what happened, we are called revisionist, as in, oh yeah, these bad guys are trying to change the history, and it's like, no, you guys did that. We're trying to understand what happened. So I found it interesting. They are revisionist, and I think we need to explore that maybe in other shows. Maybe we need to bring back your Sharia series again as well, because I think people need to listen to all of that again.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, look, after some years of having done this some years ago, obviously, I think we have a better perspective on this information. We're seeing it in a new light. There's new information. We can connect new dots, right? So, but there's a purpose behind the information we're presenting. We're getting to a point as well. Now, Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born unto him. And then, of course, there's a whole problem.
100 years old when your son was born. What were you eating, my friend? I need to know that diet. What was that diet?
With Hagar, right? There's a problem with Ishmael, and they get kicked out, right? And it says here, Abraham rose up early in the morning. He took bread and a bottle of water, and he gave it unto Hagar, putting it on her shoulder. And he sent her away, and she departed and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. And the water was spent in the bottle. She cast the child into one of the shrubs, and she went and sat down over against him a good way off, as if it were a bow shot. For she said, let me not see the death of the child. And she sat over against him and lifted up her voice and wept. Now that's interesting. There's an Islamic version of this story too. And God heard the voice of the lad, and the angel of God called Hagar out of heaven and said unto her, what aileth thee, Hagar? Fear not. For God hath heard the voice of the lad where he is. Arise, lift up the lad, and hold him in thine hand. I will make him a great nation. And God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water, and she went and filled the bottle with water, and gave the lad drink. And God was with the lad, and he grew and dwelt in the wilderness, and became an archer. And he dwelt in the wilderness of Paran, and took his mother. And his mother took him a wife out of the land of Egypt. Now, she was Egyptian. So is she Arabic if she's Egyptian? Because they're Africans like me. Because his wife was from Egypt, and his father is from Iraq. So you're talking an Iraqi, I don't know, he was Mesopotamian. I don't know what you called them back then. Babylonian. Abraham was a Babylonian, and his wife, the woman was Egyptian. So Ishmael is not Arab. Yep.
Well, they just refer to this directly as lineage from a guy like Israelites, so from Israel, and the Ishmaelites from Ishmael. But about the lands specifically, absolutely nothing to do with it. In fact, I think the belief is that the obviously Hagar and her son, they went pretty much east, but certainly didn't go south in the direction of Mecca. The contradiction happens when the description from the Bible, when we read, we know it has nothing to do, and it would be impossible to do with Mecca in all of the possible ways that we've discussed before, the distance, not enough water, all of those things. So we see how they have to make it all about Mecca. So they have a story that exists elsewhere. They remove 90% of it and says, no, this happened here. Trust me, bro.
Yep. We're going to have exact look at that story. So let's spend a few minutes before we call it a night. We'll talk about
I was told they were all Germans.
No, they probably. There's no reason why
No,
not.
seriously, that's what Ariasophy teaches. They, they like I said, they demonize a certain group of people, and so the bad people are those other people, and the good people are always the Germans.
Yeah, that's good. I'm so glad you're with us. It's good to.
Well, I mean, he's not wrong about, always playing the old switcheroo on us, right? Because look, now when we always complain about somebody, we always point fingers at the Jays, right? We're like, oh, the Jays, the Jews, the Jays, the Jays. But, Hitler and those guys was trying to do a little cleanup service. So, I mean, was they really the bad guys? If you know what I mean? I don't know, right? I don't know. But what I'm trying to say is there's even links and ties back to the Germans, Nazis, the Nordics, right? The Nordics that tie back into Odin, right? That ties back into the Ottoman Empire. It's deep shit out here. I don't think you folks understand, right? Which overall ties back to the moon. It's wild.
To have a German, you're a good guy on the panel. Thank you very much. My great grandfather was German, so hopefully that gives me some kind of. I know I'm not complexionally German, but I'm trying my best.
No, but you can see how they're revising history, just like the Muslims. We say, oh, they were all Germans. The Muslims say they were all Muslims.
Yep, exactly. So this is Hebron, where Abraham is like basically settling, right? This is Beersheba down here. Okay, Beersheba, Hebron. You've got this little line here. So let's have a look. So Muslims insist that she took a 1,200 kilometer trek. Okay. So Muslims insist that she went 1,200 as the crow flies across uninhabited, barren terrain with mountains, all the way to Mecca, all the way by herself with a little boy. Okay. That's what the Muslim story tells us. So Hebron to Beersheba, all the way to Mecca, all the way by her barren terrain with mountains, all the way to Mecca, all the way by herself with a little boy. Okay, that's what the Muslim story tells us. So Hebron to Beersheba, according to the biblical account, is 43 kilometers. Jerusalem to Beersheba is 70 kilometers or 43 miles. So Hebron to Beersheba, 27 miles or 43 kilometers. Jerusalem to Beersheba, 70 kilometers or 43 miles as the crow flies. You can see the white lines here. Okay. Now, Abraham is settled here in this region, Hebron and to Beersheba. So, yeah, okay, I think you can walk 43 Ks over a couple of days. I think it's doable, right? Especially in a fertile country. But of course, they are saying, no. She walked 1,200 kilometers back in 2000 BC or whatever it was. So Hagar's 1,200 kilometer walk. Let's look at the Islamic view. She's a strong, independent. She's a strong, independent woman. But yeah, apparently camels moved faster back then. Also, women had bigger feet back then. Just like they grew faster, like 9 years old meant you were 27. Women just had bigger steps as well. It was no flying.
Women had bigger feet back then. Oh my. Yeah.
Donkey, yeah. So Muslims are taught that the well of Zamzam is in Makkah, right? Makkah. They love the word Makkah. Hagar and the infant Ishmael traveled 1,200 k's with one bottle of water on foot across arid, uninhabited, harsh desert. In the standard Islamic narrative, Abraham walks them there, and then he leaves them under a tree with some dates. And then he walks back 1,200 kilometers. I do that all the time. I do that twice on Sundays, probably. I mean, my church is like, 1,600 Ks, and it takes me, 5 minutes to drive? Yeah, and if I walked, it would take me 10 or 15, so it's doable. I don't see where the problem is.
You just have to use your magical donkey.
Yeah, that's what I do. And Allah forgot, of course, that Hagar is not mentioned by name in the Quran. She's not mentioned in the Quran whatsoever. Muslims have to get all of these stories in third-party sources Muslim sources are divided into categories. There's da'if, which means weak. There is Hassan, which means weak. And there's Sahih, which means weak. So there are three categories of Islamic sources that all mean weak. Right, JC?
That's exactly right. It really depends on who tells the story. Then you accept it or you don't accept it. That grading means absolutely nothing. It's just part of the whole deception.
Yeah, and yeah, true. Adam was 90 feet tall. So Hagar came 612 years after Adam. So she was only 35 feet tall. So she was only, for her, it was like a 2-day walk. Because yeah, it's easy. Adam, thank you, Thunderous, for that. That really helps. So Allah forgets to mention Hagar in the Quran. In fact, a lot of this is not in the Quran. You have to go to all these weak sources. And Paran becomes the Hijaz, apparently. And then she searched for water between Safa and Marwa hills. Now, Muslims tell us that Ishmael's heel touched the ground and he opened up a well.
Yeah, can you imagine those ladies with them big feet wearing them heels? No wonder why we got all them potholes, right? Cheers, ladies. You and your high heels putting potholes everywhere. Big feet, women, in your high heels.
Muslim sources also tell us that an angel's heel touched the ground and opened up a well. Muslim sources tell us also that the angel's wing scratched the ground and opened up a well. That's just three versions of the story, but fine. And we also get told that Mecca is the oldest temple on earth. It's the oldest city on earth. The Kaaba is the first temple on earth. Of course, she gets there and there's nothing there. The Latin word for that is Fuckall. Nothing.
Oh my God. Oh my Lord. You know, for a second, I thought it was spelling some ancient language. Oh man, that was cold. I like that shit.
That is Fuckall. Nothing. There's nothing there except dry sand, 2 hills, and she's running looking for water in the world's oldest city with the world's oldest temple, which is not there. And then the kid's dying because there's no water, and then a well appears because the kid or the angel or something, and then she drinks the water next to the Kaaba, which is the oldest temple, but it doesn't exist. I have no idea. And it says in the Quran, "Our Lord, I've settled part of my descendants in a barren valley by your sacred house, the Kaaba, that they may maintain the prayer," except the Kaaba wasn't there when she got there. So either the Quran is lying or someone's got their facts wrong. JC, your thoughts? Well, I think we can end here today, but what do you think so far? Because this story just sounds like a bunch of,
Yes, it's exactly the way that Odon described all of this. They want to make everything about Islam, about Mecca and so on, so they fabricate a story. And then you now have plot holes. So then you have to create another story and rinse and repeat. And then in the end, you have tons and tons of different stories. They are all, the foundation is a lie. And this is the reason, like you've mentioned before, Lloyd, as well, that the historical critique is something that completely destroys Islam, because those stories come from the same people that tells us everything about Muhammad, and we can see, okay, yeah, Mecca wasn't there, these things didn't happen. So all of these topics are pretty much underexplored, because you cannot have a discussion with scholars and say, so Mecca wasn't there, can you just say for the public, Mecca wasn't there, it's a fabrication? They cannot say that, because that destroys the narrative. But it is just obvious, you have shown here very clearly, this has nothing to do with the origins of Islam.
Yeah. Any thoughts from you, Emmanuel?
Well, I can only say what we already hinted at, and that's that the National Socialists did the exact same. Jehovah would be, the evil demiurge. The Jews would be the archons, and actually, Jesus wasn't Jewish at all. was German. That's what they teach.
He was
And
Muslim. Exactly. He was a
yeah,
Muslim.
all the bad guys are the unbelievers, and all the good guys are the Germans, of course.
Yeah. And Abraham was a Mormon.
Simple. So simple. And anyone who contradicts this is wrong, even if he has evidence. Evidence does not matter because well, the entire physical world is not important and is actually bad. So, just trust us.
Yeah. Now, just so you know, the Islamic narrative is dated at earliest to the 750s. This Islamic narrative is dated to the 750s. We're talking more than a century after Muhammad dies. You're looking at over 100 years, 140 years after Muhammad's supposed to have died, right? Something like that. So 750s to 770s, maybe even later. But the earliest that this is dated to is the middle of the 8th century, right? And we find it in Abdul Razak al-San'ani's Musannaf, dating to the second quarter of the 2nd century AH. So you're looking at the middle of the 8th century is where this story comes from. It wasn't there when Islam was supposedly created. Oh, by the way, so indifference is saying Sahih translated. No. You have the hadiths fall into 3 categories. You have da'if hadiths, which means weak, unreliable hadiths. You have Hasan hadiths, which means weak, unreliable hadiths. And you have Sahih hadiths, which means weak, unreliable hadiths. Right, JC?
Yes, that's just the exact definition. And even I think it is the great Yasir Qadi. He was talking to his people, and he actually said that. He said, when you look at a hadith, you accept it if you trust the guy who said it. Because, and then he gives examples of some Sahih hadiths, and he says, so those as a Sahih, but I don't accept them because the guy who narrated them, I think he was dodgy. It's like basically you pick and choose what stories you tell yourself is what happened.
Right.
True story.
Yeah. So the story of the Zamzam well and the pilgrimage rituals in Mecca is from the middle of the 8th century. You can read more about it. Abraham, Hagar, and Ishmael at Mecca, a contribution to the problem of dating Muslim traditions. Oh boy. Very, very interesting reading. You might love this. And there's a little bit of a problem here. So guys, I think we'll okay, let's end here. I think it's a good place to end. That was page 48. We'll call it a night, I think. This has been great. Emmanuel, I think you got a headache there, and my head is I'm gonna have to bullshit on this.
No. I'm totally convinced by all this. The logic here seems totally sound to me, and I will not. I know better than to ask any questions. Yes.
Harry says Jesus is Dutch because he has a Dutch Bible. So there you go.
Yes, and it's Vater Abraham, which Vater is Dutch.
And Fatah is actually like it's like a political party from Palestine. So yeah, this all makes JC, final word to you.
Well, a couple of comments actually about what we have discussed, but I think it's worth mentioning now that you have actually brought up the Sirah of Muhammad, that the Muslims, they owe a debt of gratitude to the Germans because it was a German scholar who put that together. They didn't have the time to do it for over 1,000 years to write the story of their prophet.
And then a German puts together the Sirat Rasulullah. Isn't that crazy? Otherwise, they wouldn't have known. Yeah. So guys, I know I threw a lot of stuff at you, but hopefully you learned something. Hopefully you're starting to see little threads and connections and things that go like, yeah, I can see where they stole that from. I can see where they borrowed that. Yeah, that's plagiarism. Oh, that's crazy. That's nuts. What are these people even talking about? If you used to be confused, now I'm sure you're not so sure anymore. Right, Emmanuel? So
I agree.
Yeah. So guys, there's a reason there's the word Ham in Abraham. That makes him immune to Islam. Okay. Abraham. God knew what he was doing and he put the ham in the word Abraham.
Damn. He put the word ham in the Abraham. Okay. I mean, ham, you could relate that to the cow again, right?
So remember, it's the ham. And people want to remember, they want to take away your bacon, they want to take away your dogs, they want to take away your ham. So just say no to Islam. So I think we should call it a night.
Actually, that's also the ultimate proof that Muhammad was not a Muslim, because it's Muhammad. So there you have it.
There you go. There you go. Muhammad, yeah, he was ham mad. He loved his ham. So yeah, guys. So there you go. Muhammad. It's in the name. It's undeniable. It's in the name. Ham. He was mad for his ham. So clearly, to claim he didn't like ham is false, because we have the proof. So there you go. So guys, thank you very much. I will see you tomorrow. I'll be on with probably JC and Dusam.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Good stuff. I enjoyed that once again, Lloyd. Good information. Good information, Lloyd. That's what we need over here. That's what we need over here. I enjoyed that. Grand old chat room. How we doing? Lizzo in the building. Top Cat in the building. Chills in the building. Kyle in the building. Salute to you folks. Deb's in the building. Cece in the building. Sweet Asylum. What's happening? Grand old chat room. So yeah, that was it. Moon-day, nothing special, just a get together again. More information on the moon, right? Worshipping, religion. We've got plenty more to come, we're just having fun with it. I appreciate you folks coming out, spending time with me. Pretty sure we'll do this dance again. Pretty sure of it. So you already know the motto, ladies and gentlemen. Look after yourself, love over war, lay low, London.